great for us to see that we are becoming more and more international. And we are so happy to have an international keynote speaker here with us today. Stephanie is a real power woman. She is a podcast host of Strategy and Tragedy, founder herself, and VC Scout. And she has already spoken at major events such as Lisbon's Web Summit and was featured in Sifted. And today, we will hear her talk about resilience in entrepreneurship, from setbacks to success. Say hello to international keynote speaker Stephanie Melodia, who flew in from London to Bolzano on her way to Chicago. We are super excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Picture this. Brooklyn, 1960s. It's a pretty dodgy part of town. A black boy is born into a working class family with 4 other siblings. Of those 4, he really looks up to his older brother in particular. He just seems so cool. Always wearing the right clothes, different girlfriend every other week. Most of all, he brings the swag when he plays sports. This kid copies him, like little brothers do, and he becomes obsessed. He practices day and night. He pins his hopes and dreams on becoming a pro athlete. One day at school, he sees an exciting opportunity. He gets the chance to try out for his junior varsity team. This is it, he thinks. This is my moment, my opportunity. But he fails. The team reject him, and this kid is devastated. His hopes and dreams have been snatched away from him in an instant. He runs home crying, doesn't even eat dinner that night. All cried out, his emotional turmoil runs its course. And tomorrow is a new day. He gets back up with renewed determination. He gets back out there and he vows to never give up again. Ladies and gentlemen, this 14-year-old kid goes on to become a global phenomenon and the world's first billionaire athlete. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Stephanie Melodia, and I'm here today to talk to you about the important topic of resilience. Now, who am I to talk to you about this subject? Well, let's rewind the clock to 2009, which was 15 years ago now, by the way. That's when I started my first business. Straight out of art school, selling screen-printed T-shirts modeled on my baby sister, who I'm sure isn't at all embarrassed that I used that old photo of her. This first business didn't make it much further than the Facebook page that it was promoted on. You gotta love 2009. I dropped out of uni with no degree, no connections, no money, niente. Dolce far niente. And I went from Lanzarote, a small desert island, to London on my own. And I started out my career at the end of the last recession. I worked my way up and built my first proper business by the age of 30, an award-winning marketing agency. My team and I worked with 100+ founders over the course of 6 years. Combine that with my role as VC Scout and my network in London, and I have amassed a vast array of first-hand data points. I have walked the walk, and I have observed clear patterns in entrepreneurship. I know what it takes to be successful. I know the practical realities, the mindset required, and the emotional reserves, of course, including resilience. I now interview leaders on my podcast, which is called Strategy and Tragedy, and I'm a lecturer to MBA students in entrepreneurship. Bolzano, I'm here with you this evening to deliver the talk on resilience that is honestly needed now more than ever. I'm going to be sharing with you tons of inspiration, lots of practical examples. But before we get stuck in, let's see who was paying attention to my opening story. Does anyone know who I was talking about there with that 14-year-old black kid that got rejected from his high school varsity team? Can anyone guess who this might be? You then, straight. All right. Thank you, well done. Prize for you. Thank you so much. It was, of course, the one and only, the ultimate MVP, Michael Jordan. Open up the t-shirt, open the t-shirt. Open it. Haha. It was, of course, the one and only, the ultimate MVP, Michael Jordan. Now, I shared the MJ story, but there are some other great examples of resilient trailblazers who kept going despite the setbacks. Greta Gerwig, the 3 times Oscar-nominated film director of Barbie, was 2023's highest-grossing film and Warner Brothers' biggest global release in history. Can you believe Greta Gerwig got rejected from every single grad school that she applied to? Can you believe that? J.K. Rowling, 13th time lucky. Of course, we now know the infamous author of Harry Potter, which has sold over 500 million copies worldwide, translated in 82 languages, was rejected 12 times until the 13th publisher decided to take a bet on her. And more relevant to our entrepreneurial tech world here at Neutech Park, Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO of Airbnb, which is now valued at over $100 billion, hilariously got rejected by multiple VC investors. Just imagine if any of these had given up at that first, second, third, fourth, fifth rejection letter. We'd have no Barbie, no Harry Potter, no Airbnb. But Steph, these are famous people. This is survivorship bias. These are the lucky few that we've heard about today. What about the countless others who have failed along the way? Well, have a watch of this 4-minute clip on how one entrepreneur failed on national TV. Trunky is now a well-known, beloved children's luggage brand that has sold over 5 million suitcases, with revenue growing 68% per year and acquired in a deal thought to be worth over £12 million. Not bad for someone who got ridiculed on national TV, eh? There's a mental reframe that's needed here. Let me invite you all to ponder on something. Is success as binary as winning and losing? Or is the fact that we tried, we played the game, the taking part, something to be celebrated? Let me ask you an easier question. Show of hands, who here has ever failed at something? Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you've got some funny stories to tell each other in the networking later. Now, to help demonstrate that mental reframe that's required here, take a look at this viral graphic. The left side depicts a smooth, straight, upwards trajectory. However, the right-hand side is, of course, far more accurate. You see, within each of those squiggles, there are moments of success as well as failure. Did Greta Gerwig fail getting into grad school? Yeah, she did. Did J.K. Rowling fail getting her book published? Yeah, to begin with. And did Brian Chesky fail in securing investment for his new startup, Airbnb? Yeah, at the start. And what we just watched there on that clip was Rob Law, the founder of Trunky, failing on national TV. You see, these are zoomed-in moments of their squiggly career. And we see them today as the success that they now are. But of course, we all fail. We just need to make sure that we're failing upwards. So whether you're an entrepreneur or you're climbing the corporate ladder, it's an up and down journey to get to wherever you want to go. And part of that reframe required here is an acceptance that these horrible moments are never going to go away, right? But this is the kicker. Any kind of failure or rejection feels horrible. Isn't it the worst? It feels so horrible. And that's because we weren't taught at school how to fail. We're strangers to failure. And our deeply wired monkey brains just want to run away from it, right? We wish we had a magic wand we could wave to make it disappear, never deal with it. It's just so horrible. But the rough storms that we need to weather, I have to tell you, whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, executive, or otherwise, failure is guaranteed. So that mental reframe is an acceptance that those rough storms, they're never going to go away. They're simply part of that squiggly journey. Now, I mentioned rough storms. We're here at NOI Tech Park today. Who here knows what the NOI in the NOI stands for? I know Ulrich, you gave some amazing speech at the beginning there mentioning, of course, nature of innovation. And did you know one of the best examples of resilience in nature is palm trees? Did you know palm trees, they can bend up to 50 degrees without breaking? They can bend and twist and turn in some of the roughest of storms. They can even withstand winds of up to 235 kilometers per hour. Isn't that wild? So let's unpack nature's greatest example of resilience and see what we can apply to ourselves here as humans. So there are three things. So one is the natural aspect of how they are built. You see, they have a large number of short roots at their base that provide a heavy anchor. This helps keep them grounded, even in those rough storms. While less tangible, but no less important to us as humans, the way we apply this is our core values, our belief systems, what we deeply care about, what we hold near and dear to our heart, so that when push comes to shove, we know these are the things that matter the most. So have a moment to reflect on your core values, what really matters the most to you, because that forms your heavy anchored base, just like the palm trees. Secondly, palm trees also have a support network. Now, this is even more vital to us as humans because, of course, we are social creatures, and we need that support network, especially when the going gets tough. Just think back to the last time that you received some bad news or you failed at something. Who did you turn to? Maybe you picked up the phone to your partner or your mum, or hopefully you've got a mentor or manager at work. That support network that we need as social creatures is absolutely vital. And lastly, what I think is most interesting, actually, is palm trees actually get stronger with each passing storm. You'd be forgiven for thinking that those 235 kilometer per hour winds would leave them beaten and battered on the ground. But for those that manage to still keep standing, they've actually been given that opportunity to build their resilient stamina. So in a sense, we kind of need those storms to exercise that resilience muscle. They provide us with that opportunity to develop the strength and flexibility that's required to survive and thrive in our complicated world. It comes down to this: how far can you bend without breaking? The analogy only goes so far. We're not actually palm trees. We've got bills to pay and shoes to put on our feet, so we need to keep it real. For one, our time and our money, they are finite resources. How much of a financial buffer do you have? How much of a runway can keep you going? So we've got to be real here, right? Entrepreneurship is tough, especially as a founder. Not every day is going to look like a Rocky montage. You don't just get hit 7 times and back up 8. It's even harder for those of us who don't fit the mold of what a successful leader looks like. Women, minorities, people less able-bodied. This is the whole reason I even called my show Strategy and Tragedy.
No.
And not only that, but the pressure is dialed up now, because we are living in an era of what's called polycrisis. international conflict, wildfires, droughts. It feels like every other day when we open the news, there's another crisis that's unfolding. But it's not all doom and gloom. Not only are these problems solvable, they're solvable by the world's greatest problem solvers. And you're all here today, entrepreneurs. And being an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you have to be Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. You can have that entrepreneurial spirit for problem solving no matter your job role. Whether you're an international CEO, a side hustling freelancer, a corporate executive, or indeed a startup founder. And that entrepreneurial spirit can also be fostered no matter the company size. It's not just exclusive to the smaller startups, but in larger organizations as well. As a great example of this, Amazon, huge corporate, they are renowned for treating their employees as project founders. And that's how AWS, a cloud computing platform that is now 4 times the size of Amazon's core e-commerce product and dominates the market with 30% share, even came into existence in the first place, all because it started out as a proactive side project by one of their employees. So, back to problem solving. I mentioned some of those crises earlier, right? International conflict, climate change. And not to go too cliched on you here, but in crisis lies opportunity. And honestly, Bolzano, this is why this talk is so important to deliver to you right here, right now. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world. So cultivating that resilience is what you need to hear right here today. I've got tons of inspiration and practical examples to share with you. I want to inspire you, and I want to give you these examples to show you what's really possible. For example, today, half of all Fortune 500 companies were created in a crisis. Think of the likes of Dropbox, Uber, WhatsApp. They were all born from a moment just like what we're going through today. And if we go further back in time, historical brands like FedEx, UPS, Disney, and my personal favorite, Nutella. In fact, I have a few treats here for you all today while you enjoy the rest of this talk. Nutella was born out of a crisis. Nutella was created during the Second World War by Ferrero, another great Italian brand, because there was a shortage of cocoa. So Ferrero had to find substitute ingredients as an alternative, so using hazelnut and sugar and doing what they could to seize an opportunity in the crisis. Of course, today we now have this best-selling tasty snack for you all to enjoy. Now, this variety of brands all have one thing in common. Whether it's Nutella, FedEx, UPS, Dropbox, and that's they all seized the opportunity in the crisis. And they all possess the resilience to keep going and still be standing here today. So that's all very inspiring, but let's get back to the practicalities. Practically speaking, what do you do if you're not a cookie cutter, founder, that image of what a successful leader looks like?
Founders and entrepreneurs come in like loads of different shapes and sizes.
In all different shapes and sizes. And so do our own definitions of success. But what does success even really mean, first of all? It's important that we define that for ourselves. Because today, in our information age with social media, there's so much noise out there that's really easy to fall victim to comparisonitis. I've definitely fallen victim of this, comparing myself to others, wondering how they're smashing it while I'm falling behind, asking myself, what am I doing wrong? Even the term imposter syndrome has become one that many identify with these days. So we need to drown out that noise from the social media machine and look inwardsly and focus on what success means for us. What's our own definition there? For me, for example, It's prioritizing my sleep, practicing Pilates, and going on bike rides. I actually love going on bike rides in London. It's my favorite thing. Meeting friends for brunch, interviewing guests on my podcast, working where, when I like. Now, none of this is to show off, because another version of the same story could be, I haven't exited my own venture-backed tech business. I don't go to a huge head office to lead a team of hundreds of people. I don't attend quarterly board meetings. I'm not featured in TechCrunch or Wired Italia. I have been in Sifted, though. Does this mean that I'm not a success? Do you care? Do I care? But, you know, as a feminist, I can't really stand here and say, meh, maybe your idea of success just needs to change. Maybe don't get caught up in wanting to build a unicorn or have greater impact if that's what you want to do, because you can go and do Pilates and have brunch instead. I confess, I am at a stage in my life where I'm enjoying a little bit more of that softness. But as a woman and someone who's very passionate about diversity and inclusion, it's not good enough. I mentioned earlier, if you don't fit that mold of the cookie cutter, then it is tougher, right? Whether you're a woman, ethnic minority, less able-bodied. And I mentioned some famous examples earlier, like J.K. Rowling, Brian Chesky. But what about Andy Ayim, the black boy from Tottenham, a rundown area of North London, who's now an angel investing trailblazer and was awarded an MBE by the Queen of England? Or Srin Madipali, who has lived with severe physical disability his entire life. He exited his business to Airbnb, who I mentioned earlier, and has an MBA in genetics degree. My personal favorite, Sharmadean Reid, the UK's first black female entrepreneur to secure more than £1 million in venture capital funding. For people like these, it can feel like you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. On the one hand, the fight is tougher for these minorities. But on the other hand, we get to choose our own narrative. Do we want to assume victimhood and dwell on the setbacks? Or instead, do we choose to pick ourselves back up again and prove everyone wrong? Now, back to the practicalities. I mentioned finances earlier, right? We don't all have limitless funds to just keep starting new businesses or initiatives all the time. Which brings me to the last section of today's talk. Maybe quit. I know, what am I doing? Telling you to quit in a talk about resilience? Who is this mad woman? But hear me out. Sometimes you need to let go. Sometimes quitting can be a superpower. Quitting is not for losers. It's for those of us who have the objectivity to assess the situation, recognize maybe we're flogging a dead horse, and the kindness to themselves to say, it's enough. I mentioned earlier in my intro, my last business, an award-winning marketing agency called Bloom. Last year, I decided to close the chapter on that book. Why? Because I'd hit a ceiling. I was no longer motivated, and I knew that I could have greater impact elsewhere. I am completely at peace with the fact that this is simply one chapter in my own squiggly journey. A more famous example is Tom Bloomfield, the founder and ex-CEO of Monzo, a UK challenger bank, a huge fintech rocket ship. He made headlines in 2019 for stepping down into his role as founder and CEO. He was literally on the front cover of newspapers and magazines for choosing to step down. He cited mental health reasons and just needed a break. More high-profile leaders coming forwards like this helps to destigmatize quitting. Maybe this is a little bit overdramatic. Maybe instead of quitting outright and throwing in the towel, maybe a pivot is the answer instead. Now, whether it's a career pivot or product pivot, it could be that the timing simply wasn't right. I mentioned earlier a little bit about our macroeconomic environment. And it's totally true that market conditions, timings, these external factors that are out of your control, they can absolutely have a strong bearing on the success or failure of your business. So maybe you need to come back at it from a different perspective. Maybe you need to try a different idea, target a different audience. Maybe this is all part of the fermentation process, to nod to Bolzano's fame here. Either way, you will have acquired valuable learnings that set you up for success with every new attempt. You'd be amazed at some famous brands that we know today that started out entirely different. Let's take one app in particular. Now, I'm going to come back to the audience, and I'm going to ask one of you to simply open your phone and list out the apps that are on your home screen until I tell you to stop. Now, do we have any volunteers, or am I going to have to choose an unwilling victim? Great, yeah, you in the red t-shirt, please. Thank you. Okay, we need to go on someone else. I need another volunteer. You've got a very sensible app selection on your phone. Yeah, you in the white shirt. Loud, loud. Okay, well done. He's not a plant, I promise. I didn't plant him there, thank you. Instagram, we all know Instagram, right? Instagram started out entirely differently, which I'm thinking you probably already know about. In fact, they had a completely different name. They were called Bourbon, and they started out as a location-based check-in app. And there are a few other examples you might be surprised to learn about. Not you up there, you seem to be quite savvy, but maybe some others. Twitter, or X, started out as audio, a podcasting platform. Pinterest started out as a mobile shopping app called Tote. And Slack was born out of a failed video game called Glitch. And closer to home, we've got another fantastic Italian brand, Lamborghini. What comes to mind when I say Lamborghini? Think sexy sports car, yeah? Lifestyles of the rich and famous. They started out making tractors. The famous quote by Thomas Edison comes to mind here. I haven't failed. I've simply found 10,000 ways that won't work. It's vital to keep going. Why? One of you can go on to become the next Steve Jobs or Walt Disney or Oprah Winfrey. Actually, that last one's for me. I'll have my own talk show one day. And the good news is, the more that you keep going, the more successful you are bound to become. And research proves this. Take a look at this interesting bar chart from a great piece of research that showed that after the first attempt or failure, your chance of success increases by 10%. Try again, and that rate almost doubles to 19%. That rate of success steadily increases, 27%, 41%, all the way up to 65%. 65%. That means that you're more than 1.5 times more likely to succeed after that 10th attempt. And between each of these attempts, we do need to take a step back. We do need to reassess, lick our wounds, and recharge. Because motivation is not an infinite resource. I can guarantee that even for the most motivated among you, that motivation will run out sooner or later, but that's a whole other talk for a different time. And between each of those steps, we need to refinance. I hope in this talk today I've given you tons of inspiration, but also balanced it with that practical perspective. Yes, you should keep going. Yes, you need to exercise your resilience muscle. But yes, of course, we need to refinance in between each of those steps. So we need to get real here too. So what's the bottom line? You have to keep going. No matter whether you're an investor, advisor, entrepreneur, or otherwise. It's important to take inspiration, look at the palm trees, and keep on going. You have your own definition of success, which is just as unique as you are. Remember, comparisonitis is fueled by the social media machine. So focus on what's right for you. And remember, rejection is all part of that journey. We all fail. We just need to try and fail upwards. Know when to pivot and adapt along the way. Overcome any feelings of shame because that vision that you had for your business or your career is likely to change with time. So it's important to remain agile. And the good news is, the more that you keep going, the more successful you are bound to become. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and attention here this evening. I leave you with these final words of inspiration. Michael Jordan is the NBA's first billionaire player. Today, his net worth is estimated at $3.2 billion, and he remains a global icon around the day today. Just imagine if he'd cut his losses at that high school rejection when he was 14 years old. Bolzano, thank you so, so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your time. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much, and the next time I will think about quitting or giving up on something, I will definitely think about you, Stephanie. Thank you. Make some noise for Stephanie.